Time for focus, and today we're heading to Poland, where thousands of US troops deployed last month. This because of concerns over a more aggressive Russia. The deployment comes after Poland embarked on a major restructuring of its armed forces, but it's hemorrhaging top generals, those who don't agree with the reforms or simply those whom the rather eccentric defence minister doesn't like. The scale of the exodus drawing comparisons with Stalin's purges in the Soviet Union. Gulliver Cragg reports.
American tanks in their first live-fire exercise in Poland. US troops are here to reassure NATO's eastern members and deter the Russians. Or the Soviets, as Poland's defense minister Antoni Macierewicz still calls them.
During the Soviet attack on Georgia in 2008, the late President Lech Kaczynski warned us. Today Georgia, tomorrow Ukraine, next the Baltics, and after that Poland may be under threat. Today I know that we will not be.
Yet to many, Macierewicz himself is anything but a reassuring figure. The powerful nationalist minister is widely seen as a proponent of conspiracy theories and reckless rhetoric, especially by his liberal predecessors.
A minister who claims that de facto we are at war with Russia, that France somehow secretly sold ships Mistral to Russia for $1, and making all sorts of similar totally hilarious claims. He cannot be treated seriously.
Janusz Onyszkiewicz was minister when Poland joined NATO in 1999. He says Macierewicz has destroyed the country's reputation.
I must say that I feel absolutely awful, because we built for decades our position in NATO, in the European Union, and now everything is in ruins.
The very next day after inaugurating the Americans' exercises, Macierewicz was at a rather less celebratory ceremony. A farewell to the military's chief of staff, Mieczysław Gotsul. His departure caps what is a mass exodus. 26 generals and 260 colonels have left or been forced out of the Polish armed forces over the past year. That's a third of the total and includes the commanders of Poland's main recent active missions in Iraq and Afghanistan.
There's no question about it. This is simply a huge loss for the army, to lose the people who led those missions. Not so much because they fought the Taliban, but because they worked so closely with American, British, and other NATO officers.
None of the generals will talk publicly of the reasons for their departure.
Why have you resigned? You're so young.
Well, this is very much personal matter, so I don't want to explore it.
Yet it's clear these officers have found it impossible to work under Antoni Macierewicz. Privately, they complain about the minister's insistence on political loyalty, his obsession with conspiracy theories, and the focusing of resources on his pet project, territorial defence brigades. Despite the top brass's scepticism, though, this idea for a 50,000-strong reservist force is wildly popular among its potential recruits. Poles care about defence. Tens of thousands of citizens are already members of amateur paramilitary organisations. This one trains every week in the historic centre of Rzeszów.
This is also just a good group of friends who spend time together and help each other out in life outside of this hobby too, away from school, work or studies. Different people have different hobbies. Some buy an aquarium and some go fishing, and some like to do this stuff.
It's not just a hobby, though.
Our aim is to educate young people in a patriotic spirit and prepare them for possible work in the uniformed services, whether police or military.
More than half of this organisation's members plan to sign up for the new territorial defence brigades. These will be outside the main military chain of command and answer directly to the ministry. Critics say this means they could be overly politicised and attract right-wing extremists. I put this to the minister when he visited a company producing equipment for the new brigades.
So you've heard about Maciarewicz's abominable brigades. Well, this is one of the main leitmotifs of the hate speech that is part of a discourse designed to destroy the reconstruction of the Polish army.
Perhaps for this reason, Macierewicz has listed the fight against disinformation among the new territorial army's tasks.
For more on this, I'm now joined by Marcin Zaborowski. He's the Executive Vice President of the Centre for European Policy Analysis, or CEPA. Hello, thank you very much indeed for your time. Now, what's really the purpose of the new Territorial Defence Brigades that we hear about in this report?
Well, what the minister is saying himself, is that Poland needs to reboot its capability for protecting the eastern flank of NATO in case of a territorial invasion from Russia. But, there is a clear suspicion that territorial defense made up of amateurs with very little training would have a very little, field military capability, and in effect would really be an army of political loyalists underpinning the, basically the current Polish government in power.
Now, considering that the defence minister is rather eccentric, it would seem, how is he viewed by Poland's NATO allies?
I think the NATO allies are very worried about the extent of change within the armed forces, the departure of most of professional top brass, including the Chief of Staff, Deputy Chief of Staff, the Chief of Army, and heads of the missions. So basically, all the major, professional top brass generals, four-star generals, have departed in protest against the scale of change and deprofessionalization of the armed forces. So I'm hearing from the allies a lot of worry about that and a lot of concern.
But I'd just like to talk a little bit more about the defence minister himself, because the Prime Minister apparently had said that she wouldn't name him in this position, and in the end she did, or rather her boss, the head of the Law and Justice Party, did. Why is that he ended up in this job, considering that maybe they could have suspected that there would be this purge or this exodus of key military officials?
Well, it was really a political decision. I mean, it's clear that Mr. Macierewicz is very strong in Law and Justice Party. He represents one of the hardcore right-wing fractions within the right-wing party, very close to the Radio Maria ultra-Catholics. And also he took upon himself the job of being the chief investigator in the crash of the former president, who was deceased in crash in Smolensk, basically Macierewicz is the founder of the theory that this was all a conspiracy and was all Russian plot done together with the former Polish government. And clearly the leader of Law and Justice, Jarosław Kaczyński, is somehow vulnerable to that theory. And since that, the position of Macierewicz has gone really up within the Law and Justice Party. So he's just politically a very powerful person within the party.
Now, I'd just like to ask a more general question. Are people in Poland now, do you think, more worried about the leader in Russia, Vladimir Putin, or Donald Trump, especially considering his statements recently on NATO, even though today we saw James Mattis trying to reassure NATO allies?
Well, the combination of two is very worrying. Naturally, Vladimir Putin and his policy towards Ukraine, next door from Poland, is a source of war in Poland, because we feel the effects of what is happening in Ukraine, on a daily basis. I mean, we have a really considerable number of Ukrainian migrants going into hundreds of thousands. Arriving, on daily basis. They are not refugees, but these are migrants, mostly, economic migrants, because the situation is so bad in Ukraine. But at the same time, you have this Russian policy that is causing instability in the region. but at the same time you have an American president who clearly wants to make a grand bargain in deals with Putin and who considers Putin to be as trustworthy partner as Angela Merkel, who does not like NATO, who does not like the European Union. So basically the days when we could rely on the American strategic anchor in Europe are gone. And that means that countries like Poland would be particularly vulnerable. In the past, we didn't have an American, strategic anchor in Europe. We didn't have the European Union. We didn't have NATO. And we ended up with 2 world wars.
I'm afraid we've run out of time, so we'll have to leave it on that note. Marcin Zaborowski from the Centre for European Policy Analysis, thank you very much indeed for your time.
Thank you.